What's up, gang? I'm back. Got a lot I want to talk to you guys about today. Not really, it's not that serious, but it's pretty cool. Something I'm really interested in. So we've got a couple of, well, the topic we're going to discuss today is the source of a little bit of controversy. So I'd like to dispel some rumors today. I've often heard that there's no difference between a PCB amp and a hand-wired amp. And I've heard people say that there's a night and day difference. It's absolutely wild. So what I've got are two nearly identical amplifiers. One is hand-wired, one is not. If you look behind me, you'll see. We have a 64 Princeton Reverb Amp, hand-wired, custom shop. And then to the left of that, we have your standard run-of-the-mill production line Fender Princeton 65 reissue. So, you might be asking yourself, well, they're not the same amp then. One of them is 64 and one of them is 65. Yes, that's true. There are some very minor differences in between those 2 years, but by and large, period-wise, they're almost identical in their wiring scheme if you look at them historically. Now, you'll sound off in the comments because there are differences, so, I don't want to get into all that stuff today. All I really want to talk about is what they sound like. And if there's a huge difference, if one is better than the other, if one is worse. So let's get into some sound, shall we? So we're going to get into some playing now. Just so you know, we have both amps set pretty much unity volume. They're both running pretty low right now, so we're not really pushing a whole lot into the tubes. Just keeping it nice and clean. And we're going to go bounce back and forth between the two. Okie dokie. So that's both amps, one after the other. So the first one was the hand-wired amp. The second one was the non-hand-wired amp. And I think just by listening, you'll be able to tell a huge difference. So to my ear, and this is obviously subjective to everybody, and full disclosure, I play through a Princeton. That's my main amplifier, is a just regular old production Princeton, and I love it. It's one of my favorite amplifiers. So the difference to me, it seems like, and I can't stress this enough, one of the biggest differences is not necessarily how it sounds, but how it feels. And I think if you were to sit down in front of both amps and play them, you'd be able to tell. One feels a little bit more responsive. in that it feels like you can dig in a little bit more. The hand-wired amp tends to have that feel. of being able to kind of, it's squishier to the feel. And if you're a guitar player that's been playing for any length of time, you'll know what I mean by squishy. If not, look it up or comment and I'll describe it better. Anyways, whereas the non-hand wire, the regular Princeton has a little bit more, it's a little more brash. It's a little bit more immediate sounding, where it's almost like it just comes right out of the speaker really quickly. It's got a lot more top end, it seems. Whereas the hand wired has a little bit of a roll off in the high end. It's just, I don't want to say that it's not there, it's just smoother. There's probably a little bit more non-linearity in the transformers and the way that the wiring works and everything. So you might be wondering, what exactly does hand wired mean? I'll explain it to you. So the difference between a hand wired amp and a non-hand wired amp is with a regular run-of-the-mill production amp, it's not that there's necessarily like digital components, it's still all analog. The difference is it's much easier to connect all of those parts together with a PCB board, like a chip, like a computer chip essentially, but it's not a computer chip, don't worry. You just mount all the pieces onto a PCB and then you can run wires up to the pots and all the different inputs, and it just makes it quick. It's actually really neat the way they do it. They have like vats of solder that you can just dip. You can populate the PCB and then dip it in solder and then cut all the leads off, and you can do it really quickly. Whereas with a hand wired amp, you don't have that. You don't have the PCB, you don't have all that. It's just a board essentially where that's populated with components that are all individually wired together. So there's no intermediary between the individual components and capacitors and transistors. They're connected to each other individually, and then all of those run to your inputs and outputs and to your pots and various and sundry other things. And so that results in a different tone. Everything you do to a circuit is going to change the tone and the feel of the amp, whatever that may be. So what I'm going to do now is I'd like to go back in and crank these amps up a little bit just to see how they handle some pressure, because that's the fun part. Obviously we had them really clean before, so they're not that fun to play when they're that clean. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so if you're paying attention, you'll notice the characteristic of the breakup of each amp is a little different. So we've maintained some of the frequency response that we had when they were clean, but it seems like that difference becomes slightly less as we turn the amps up. Now, granted, if you can see the amps, I've got about, so the regular Princeton's on 6, and the other one's on 5. So here's one of the issues with amplifiers, particularly when we get into the world of hand-wired stuff. Components have this thing called drift, where over time the values of each component changes. Now, I'm not saying that, like, because it's a brand new amp, I'm not saying like it's, you know, everything's drifted since it's gotten here. My point is that every amplifier is going to be different just by a little bit, because values of components are subject to change by anywhere from 10 to 20% in the same batch. So that being said, both of these amps, if you were to go on the Fender's website, I checked this yesterday when I was researching, they're both labeled as 12-watt amplifiers, but the regular Princeton is typically considered a 15-watt amp. And one of the things with wattage is, a lot of times when you look at an amplifier and it says, oh, this is a 10-watt amp, this is a 15-watt amp, that's usually like a safe number to call it, and it's usually pushing a little bit more than that. So you could say that either one of these amps could theoretically be pushing 15 watts. However, if I didn't know any of that, which is probably just enough knowledge to get me in trouble, frankly, but if I didn't know any of that, I would wager that the hand-wired amp is a lower wattage amp. And I say that because you can push it a little less and it starts to break up. And once again, that kind of comes back to the issue of feel, how it feels to play. I think at this volume, I'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between the two, but I can definitely feel a difference. You know, once again, it's that squish factor, baby. You gotta have that squish factor. And the squish factor on the hand-wired is astronomical. So yeah, I'll let you be the judge. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna show some of the specs here, because I don't want to call them off the top of my head because I'll probably get them all wrong. They're pretty much the same tube complement from what I've researched. The rectifier tube is slightly different, but not by a wide margin. So check that out. We'll have the specs listed up there, and then, you know, if you want to check it out for yourself, come down to Casino Guitars, play them. We got them both here. You can try them. It's tight, and you can come in the back. We can play them both at the same time. You ready, Derek? Yeah, that's really fun. It's better when they're both on at the same time. Okay, cool. I'm going to sign off now. If you guys have any questions, give us a call. I'll be happy to help. And I'm going to leave it up to you to decide which one you think is better. Personally, I don't know if either one is better or worse than the other. I know that sounds like kind of sounds like chick, but honestly, it might just come down to a preference. Before we did this video, I was kind of sold that the hand-wired is definitely better. But I don't know. I don't know anymore. I'm gonna have to think about it. So sound off in the comments, like and subscribe. Let us know what you think, because that's what we care about, is how you feel. We want to know how it affects you in your personal life. And yeah, have a good one. Bye, guys.